you've got to be willing to choose and lose everything. Like every single thing I've ever invested in, I'm willing to lose. Like, is what you are currently choosing with your life, your business, your relationships, your money flows, your body, everything, is that actually working for you? Or would you like to change something and choose something different? What if everything you've ever been told in life you found out was a lie? Like, what would you choose?
Wow. Are you feeling stuck, lost, tired, or uninspired? We've all been there, including myself. I'm Coach Des, mindset motivator and lifestyle entrepreneur. I'm here to tell you that the best, unapologetic, and limitless version of yourself is yet to come. The Born Unbreakable podcast is here to inspire just that. With motivating guests from all different walks of life and around the world, their stories will empower you to unlock abundance and your unbreakable spirit. Do you need accountability? Reach out to me for a free consultation of how I can support you in reaching your maximum potential. Hey everyone, it's Coach Des here with an announcement about my Born a Boss Babe 90-day transformational program for 18 to 24-year-old women who are looking to build their confidence, their courage, and their compassion in the world. So if that's you or someone you know, reach out to me at des@bornunbreakable.com. Listen, when we think about people like Oprah Winfrey or LeBron James, what separates them from others is the coaching, the mentorship, the investment that they make in themselves to be great. What if you could supercharge your life at 20 years old so that when you're 30 and 40, you're that much further? When I was that age, college was an incredible foundation for me. But one of the things that was missing is that community that could help me grow and think more intentionally about things like relationships, finance, health, mental wellness. All of those things are important in accelerating how we show up in the world and the impact that we have. If you're ready to supercharge your life, it's time to reach out to me so we can do it together. The program launches in August. I'm so excited and I can't wait to see you there. Welcome to the Born Unbreakable podcast. I'm your host, Coach Des. So excited to be back here with you. Last time you were with me, I did a solo episode. So I'm excited in this episode to have an incredible guest, Simone Milasas, who is a serial entrepreneur. And I'm really excited to get into her story. But she's the founder of the global organization, Joy of Business. And she's done a number of things, including invest in an Italian castle, a racehorse, gold, antiques, to name a few. So I'm sure you're interested in hearing about how she's done those things. And she's got a few bestsellers. So you'll want to check those out. Getting Out of Debt Joyfully. I would love to know about doing that joyfully. I'm sure people would too. And also Relationship. Are you sure you want one? Sometimes we think we do, and we may be wrong. No, but this is so exciting because I know that so many people who tune in are creatives, but they also are interested in business, whether you're in, working for a business or you're really interested in branching out and doing more entrepreneurial things. I think you'll get so much value out of this interview. So Simone, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on here.
This is going to be exciting. So I think a great place to start is your entrepreneurial journey. You've done a number of things, but where did it all begin for you?
Wow. Yes, good question. And where did it all begin? I'm not quite sure I have this moment that it all began. I often quite say, I think the blood running through my veins is different. That's why I've just chosen everything. So, like when I was at high school, a lot of people used to talk about going to university, college, getting married, having kids, and
the usual, right?
Yeah. I was like looking at everyone going, what? And I was like, there's got to be something different. And people would ask me, and I was like, I want to travel the world. I just want to see the world. I want to see the world, and I want to start my own business. And people would go, well, what sort of business do you want to have? And I was like, I don't know right now. I don't really have a point of view. For me, creating a business was something, I saw this as a way to create something and choose something that you could get out there into the world and make the changes in the world that I perceived were possible. So, always from a really young age, I was like, there has to be more than this. This can't be it. The trauma and drama and the small, I'm going to say the smaller mentality, I would look around and go, there's a whole planet here. There's a whole world here. There's so much, like, let's go, let's explore. And that's not what I was surrounded by. So I'm going to say I felt really different, and I knew I had to follow that different. So when I was like, I think it was 19, I left with so little money in my bank account, and I left and I went to America. And I spent 3 months in America, and then I went to London, and I ended up traveling for 3 years and just working here and there and just discovering the world. And at that time, I started writing. I had this notebook, and I started writing all these different things down that I would like to create in the world. And a lot of it was basically to wake people up. Like how do I, I had this vision of me just grabbing people by the shoulders and saying, shaking them, going, don't you get it? There's something else other than this, and I went, well, that's probably not going to work.
Maybe a different strategy.
Yeah. Maybe it's a bit violent. No. So it was like, what business can I create that could implement that? And I started writing all that down. And as I, traveled around the world, just discovering so many different people, cultures, the way people interacted and engaged with each other and the earth, etc. Then I just kept creating different businesses and doing different things. And I guess the main business that I really created was called Good Vibes for You. And it was basically, a lot of merchandise and things like that I perceived to change the way people looked at the world and looked at each other. Like, I always wanted to make a change.
Mm-hmm. So when you were 19 and you left, where did you leave from? Where was home?
Sydney. I was born and bred in Sydney, I say. Went to a private school, that whole private school mentality, that what you're supposed to do, there's the next steps. And I did the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And I went to Hawaii, first of all, right? So Hawaii is like, yay, that's lovely, little luau and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Then I went to LA and we had a hostel in Venice Beach. Oh my God, I nearly died. I was like, this is like every American movie coming to life. There was a gun shooting down the road. Like, there was all these different, and I was like, and I remember looking at my friend going, should we be here? Like, are we too young for this? But
what is going on?
sort of got thrown into it and handled it and just went, whoa, the world is a really different place to what I thought it was, where I grew up in the same city, English speaking, blah, 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 this whole thing. Do you know what I mean? We tend to grow up in this environment that we find really comfortable. And I think if you're going to be like that entrepreneurial energy, you need to step outside of that comfort zone and find something different, like engage with all of the world and all of society to find out what else is actually possible.
And you stepped way out. It wasn't like you stepped out of your city, your town, your province. You stepped out of your country and you went far, and then you continue to do that. What gave you the courage to just explore like that?
Look, good question. And I'm going to, if it sounds insane, that's okay, because I'm willing to be the weirdest person on the planet. But I felt like the world was pulling me, like, all these different cities and countries. And it was like, hey, come check me out, come check me out, come check me out. Mm-hmm. Like, after I spent time in America, I had no money. And we had a flight, though, like a round the world flight. And I arrived in London and I had 50 pounds on me, which is hardly anything. And I remember we got a bed and breakfast for a night. Do that thing of like, they've got the boiled eggs and the bread. So take a couple of extra eggs and a piece of bread so you can have that for, I don't know, lunch, dinner, later sort of thing, like really no money. And I remember going into this, it was like a temp agency. And I said, hey, do you have any jobs? And she went, no, we're full. And I went, oh, okay. And I said, well, thank you so much. And then she stopped me and she said, hang on, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Australia. And she went, she said, sit down and wait. She said, if you can give me 30 minutes, just wait and I'll come see you. And I was like, okay. So then I did. And then I spoke to her and I said, why did you ask me to sit down if I was from Australia? And she said, oh, all Australians, New Zealanders and South Africans are so desperate for money by the time they come here, they're willing to do anything. And I went, well, that's true. I've got 50 pounds in my pocket. So I was like, all right. So my first job in London was stuffing these invoices into envelopes for 3 days. But I was so happy that I was getting paid and I was earning money. I didn't have to, go home. And I remember even with that, it was a 3-day job and I finished it in 2 days. And the guy who was paying me said, let me give you a little hint. And I was like, okay. And he said, if I hire you for 3 days, take 3 days. I can only pay you for 2. And it was one of my first moments that I went, God, is this the way the world works? Rather than the speed or for me, it was like, one of the books I wrote, the first book I wrote was called Joy of Business because I love business. To me, it's really joyful. And it was this moment that I went, oh, people like that. There was a lack of contribution in that for me. It's like, why would we not contribute to each other and move at the speed of, ease and joy that we could, but not try and, I don't know, take relax into this thing of just like, someone else is going to pay it. You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing. It was interesting. I was 19 and I went, oh, okay. So you're not supposed to work hard in the workforce is what I got from that.
Yeah. Work within these confines and that should be sufficient.
Yeah. And I realized I'm different. I'm really different. That's not my reality. It's not my world.
No. I think different is better.
You actually get to be you.
Well, and that's just so aligned because my message on this show is to be unapologetically you. So
I love that. I saw that and I went, oh, I love that. Unapologetically you. Yeah. Brilliant.
Well, and so that's one of the things I was so attracted by with your story is this. So going back to one of the things I really want to touch on is this conventional way of thinking, because whether you're in Australia or actually any part of the world, even though we grow up in different cultures and traditions, there is somewhat of a rubric for success. And that's pretty tried and true, if you will. Like there is a majority that leans in that direction. But I also want to point out that there's nothing wrong with that. So I certainly, went to school, went to college, got a job, but then realized that there was just other things of interest and fulfillment besides doing that, and then started to branch off and do more entrepreneurial things. But there's just something inside of us that is this little voice that's eager to do new things, but at the same time that voice emerges, there's another voice that talks you out of it because it's scared. It's scary, it's different. And then you do the whole well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? What if I fail? And then you talk yourself into this loop. And oftentimes we then don't pursue the things that we're interested in or passionate about because of that voice. So what was for you the first time that you invested in a business where you were taking a risk, but told yourself that you were going to do it anyways?
Well, I would like to explore what you said in a slightly different way, because for me, it's like, your knowing is that quick, your
intuition.
Absolutely. And know. And so with that though, you've got to be willing to choose and lose everything. Like every single thing I've ever invested in, I'm willing to lose, because if you make it this, look at the energy of that. If that was a personal relationship and you went into this relationship and you were like, oh my God, if I lose you, it's going to be, it doesn't create this great energy. And so anything that I start, any business, any investment, stock portfolios, real estate, anything, I'm like, worst case scenario, am I okay if I lose it? Yes. Okay, let's go. So that's one area that I would look at. And the second piece, when you talk about this second voice, what I find is it's not your voice. It's everybody else's point of view. And we tend to buy everybody else's point of view. Like people like you to play it safe. They like you to be able to be a certain way so they can define you. Because if you are undefinable to your friends, to your family, you make them so uncomfortable. So
You're
if you look,
rogue. You are
yeah,
rogue.
yeah, you are. You've gone rogue, and it's like they're like, ooh, ooh. So then the third piece to that is you just need to get filthy rich, because when you're wealthy and rich, then everybody just wants your money, and they go, oh, hang on a second, she's so different. I can't define her, but you know what? Maybe she's onto something there. But if you have no money, then they just put you into the Looney Tunes category and go, oh, she's doing some weird ass thing again. You know, it's like,
That
what is
is so
now?
true.
You know, so I learned that. Everything I've just spoken about, I've learned, because it's my friends and my family, I would hear them and they'd be like, oh, but you don't choose that. Oh, but you don't do that. Or that's taking too much of a risk. And I was like, I didn't actually ask you for your point of view. I would actually just like to choose it. And I know I've offended a lot of people by going, thank you for your judgment. Thank you for your point of view. Like, not really the words, but energetically. And then just went, I'm going, you know,
Yeah.
and it just flew. It's like sometimes, you know, I've flopped, I've failed in some choices I've made in business. But I tell you what, I have gained awareness. And I think that is imperative, that every single choice you make, ask, what awareness did I gain with this choice? Because the money I've gained awareness. The money I've made, it's like, great, gained awareness. It's like all of it.
Yeah. And you've had fun along the way, because that's been a
Absolutely.
principle of yours,
Yeah.
to have joy in what you do. Why this life is about this big? Why would we be miserable? Why?
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know. It's
You
like
know,
another choice available, ladies and gentlemen.
right? I mean, it pains me when I see people who are going through what appears to be the monotony. It's safe, it's secure, it's repetitious, but it's also boredom
Yeah.
and sadness, and all these things that those are those look at the clock. I call it look at the clock moments.
Yeah.
When you're looking at the clock and waiting for something to be over, you need to be thinking of something else to be doing.
You know, I love that analogy. That's great. I even look at that with it's funny, I was having this conversation. I do this private Pilates sessions, and I was making a comment the other day that whenever she goes, okay, and your session's done, I go, oh, it's over already. I never look at the clock because I friggin' love it, you know. And I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So, but you know, I grew up with two different things as well. And I think it's really interesting to see what you grow up with, because a lot of the times what you grow up with, you buy that point of view and that reality is yours, and it's not. So my first tool would be to ask, if I was choosing to create my life, my reality today, like my business, my money flows, whatever it is, what would I choose? Not what would my parents choose, what would my friends choose, you know, any of that. It's like, what would I choose? Like, what do you know? And for me, I had, like, my mother was the play it safe. She, you know, once they had the house, she was like, that's it, that's enough. We need to now play it safe, right? And she was always like that. And she was like, you need to get a good, safe job. You know, like when I came back from overseas, she's like, now that you've got that out of your system, you get a good, safe job. And I remember I was horrible, the early 20s, you know, going, I'd rather stick needles in my eyes than get a good, safe job, you know.
Of
But I
course.
was trying to like justify my random choices. And now I realize I don't have to justify any choice I make. I can just choose. And my father, on the other hand, he was a chartered accountant. And I remember as a kid, like he dabbled in a lot of different businesses. Like, you know, he would, I don't know, at one stage we were partners of a butcher shop, and then this importing business from India. And then I remember the picnic table craze came out and we were part of that. So he was always really willing to be that entrepreneur and do that. But my mother was always like, you have to stop, you have to stop. She wasn't willing to take the risk. Whereas my dad, saw that joy and that enthusiasm of what you could have and create in the world by your choices. And so luckily my dad really got me, and he was always empowering. He died about 9 years ago, but he was so empowering to me and was always saying, Simone, your life is your choice. You need to choose. I'm here for you. And yet you need to go find out what it is that you would like to create as your life. And I was so grateful for that.
And that's the thing, is that only we can determine what that is.
Yeah.
You know, it's within us, and that is not anybody else's responsibility to make those decisions. And so when you really are looking inward, you're leaning into the best version of you,
Yep.
and you have the right to change your mind. You have the right to, do more than one thing. And I think I do think that's the journey that we all go on, is this tension or this friction of fighting the other, the other voice that comes in and says, but why? And there is almost a posture of defensiveness that you have to defend something. But I love what you pointed out of, you just do what you want to do, regardless of somebody saying that it's the right thing or not. It's the right thing for them, but that might not be the right thing for you.
Yeah. And I just think it's like, what if we stop defending our choices? But when I talk about that, I can see a lot of people sort of go to, oh, now I have to fight for what I want. No, if you're truly choosing for you, you actually show other people that they can choose for them. Like, what if we stopped referencing the past and everybody else to create our lives and our business and our money flows and our ideas? And what if we started choosing from what we know? Like, and being in question. I think being in question is imperative. It's like, is this going to create something greater? Is this congruent, this choice, with what it is that I would like to create in the world? And, with those quote unquote voices like you're talking about, I would like ask a question: who does this belong to? Is this point of view mine? And it's like, what is this person, trying to do? Because like I mentioned, I wish it wasn't like this, but I don't see a lot of people who are surrounded by families who are truly supportive. Every now and then you do, but a lot of families are more like, you have to stay in this box. You have to function like this. You're not allowed to be ridiculously, more successful and wealthy than everybody else in the family. It's like there's a safety. Don't go too poor, or don't go too this, but also don't go too high, because
there's guardrails.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, there is. We don't know how to control that. Like, don't get out of control. And it's like, why not? What if we were all willing to be out of control and truly choose what it is we desire? What would we create? What would we choose? I mean, the people who you are the most attracted to in the world are the ones who are actually being them. And if we get to be us, nobody does you like you. So, that's what I would love to see everyone choosing. What works for you?
Yeah, well, and there's an authenticity in that, right?
Yeah.
And so part of what we're working through as we're moving our way through the world is all of the constructs that we've been, to some extent, indoctrinated in, right?
Oh.
Because when you grow up, there's point of views that are bestowed upon you, and then there's other forces at work, right? You bring in religion. You bring in education, the kind of education that you have. So you've got outside the household, you've got inside the household, you've got the community at large. And so all of a sudden you're paying allegiance to all of these different entities that are grooming you. But throughout all of that, I love the point that you're making in each of those interactions and experiences, asking the question, do I agree with this? Is it serving me? Is this how I want to be in the world? Because to me, it's the difference between consciousness and almost unconsciousness. Because when you're unconscious, you're just going with what is in front of you. When you're conscious, you're making decisions about what you really want, right?
I would say you're making choices, because to me, a choice too is, you choose, and you can choose in 10-second increments. Like, you can choose and choose again and choose again and choose again and choose again. And a lot of times when we make a choice, when we make it into a decision, it's sort of got this solidity to it, like it's locked in. I mean, you said before, it's like, we're allowed to change our mind. Like, I know at school here, it's like you're 14 years of age and they're saying, what do you want to do when you leave school? Like, pick your subjects so that then you can go, what university, what college. And I remember having a chat with my stepson at one stage, and I went, hey, dude. And I was like, just know, whatever you choose now, you're allowed to change your mind, because I know what they're like at school. They're like, you got to stick to this so you can get this, end result that you're asking for. I'm like, he's 14. He likes gaming.
He barely knows what he wants to eat, let alone what he wants to be.
He just wants to eat a lot. I know that. Yeah. But it's like, so you're allowed to change your mind, but it's like, where do we get into that place like, oh, now I'm 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, that we go, oh, I'm not allowed to change my mind. Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So what if you looked at each choice you made and went, okay, so this moment I'm going to choose this? Because you know in life, like how many times you choose something and you think you're going on this direction and then something else pops up. And if you kept going in that direction because you go, no, this is the road I'm going down, it's like, is that the road of this, lightness, ease, joy, fun, revenue streams, etc.? Or did something come along and go ping and you go, oh, that. Like I moved up to Queensland in Australia to study to be a naturopath at the College of Natural Medicine. I enrolled, I paid my fee, I did all of that. And then I went to a mind, body and spirit festival and met this guy who was an access consciousness facilitator and was like, this is interesting, and had a chat with him. And then I went to an introduction night that he was doing. And then I got my bars run, which is a hands-on process we do. And I went, this is so matching the energy. Like it's congruent with what I've been asking in the world. So I just null and voided my whole college thing. And I went, I got to find out more about this. And then here I am 21 years later of a facilitator of access consciousness. And I'm so grateful I did that and didn't become a naturopath. But that's why I moved to Queensland, was to become a naturopath. Do you know what I mean? You got to acknowledge those moments where your body or your being goes, do this, move over there, ring this person, pick up that newspaper, turn on the TV. And then you get these pings and the universe is going, hey, these whispers, and you go, oh, that. But if you're not listening to those voices of every other person around you who's decided they know what you should be doing, then you get to choose. Comes back to
that. That is incredible, because that is what awareness is.
Yes.
Is a complete presence of the moment. And
Yep.
I think the other thing that happens that we battle against is this predictability, right? That goes back to the safety. And this is what happens. You paint this picture of this path of like, I hear this all the time. I did this myself, and people, younger people are, okay, in 5 years, I'm going to do X. And then by the time that happens, I'll be ready for this. And then the next thing that's going to happen is, I can't even tell you, even just in a week, how many conversations in passing that I have just through my travels, and just, a lot of them just are random, but they're so focused on the time that it will take to do a certain task or milestone. Often they're big milestones like marriage or kids or career. And it's almost a insertion of limitations on your life when you're saying, hey,
yeah.
Well, then what happens is this disappointment of this, I'm going to do this. This is going to take me 3 years. And then when it doesn't happen, oh, well, I didn't do it, because now it's 3.5 years and I just must be a failure. And it's like, oh my gosh, that couldn't be farther from the truth, because you are living in the moment. And in moments, there is gut instincts, awareness, those things, what you talked about, those pings from the universe. And most of the time, that's not a linear path.
No.
That is not some kind of thing that says, yes, in this amount of time, this will be achieved. And I've been proven wrong every single time I've done that in my life. That's like, oh, I'm going to put a timeline, and, and it's not to say you shouldn't plan and you shouldn't be, organized. But I do think that there is some cautiousness that we need to exercise when there's too much of that mentality, because it almost is creating a limiting vibration. That keeps us from these possibilities that we may not even be aware of right now. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. You said that beautifully, and I totally agree. I mean, if you have no expectations and projections of your life, but you get to choose, it's a different world. I mean, even Buddha says, expectations will always make you unhappy. So, and I like to talk about the predictability part, right? It's like, if you're trying to predict your life, I want you to tell me one day one day of your life that you woke up in the morning and you knew exactly what was going to happen that day, and then by the time you went to bed, it did happen. It never does. Life is not predictable. It's like, stop trying to make it predictable. And the way you described that was beautiful, in the sense of, you try and predict something, then all you can receive is that. You will not receive all of the possibilities, the infinite possibilities that are available to you, if you let go of trying to predict your day, predict your life, predict your business, predict your relationships, predict your money, all of that. If you let go of all of that, you'll see the $20 lying on the floor. You'll see the business possibility that pops up by a random conversation with someone that you're sitting next to on a plane, because that wasn't in your predictability. You can't predict stuff like that. Yeah. So and it's so interesting, because we try and predict our life to be safe. I'm sorry. So, I mean, living in Australia is very interesting. We've had major bushfires, major floods, and I know the rest of the world has had different stuff going on. You can't predict that. And things like that come along. Like, when I live across the road from the beach, when you've got floods and you've got a king tide, you're like, oof, the planet's just like, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't predict stuff like that. So it's like, what if you started living your life from like the wind, and it's like, ask a question and allow the leaves to drop, and the winds to blow, and the branches to break, and the acorns to fall on the floor, and the flowers to bloom, and the bees, and allow all of it. And that's your business, that's your life. Just allow it to come to fruition. But if you're super, like you mentioned, if you're being aware, you'll know, boom, that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that presence, that really smelling those, as they say, roses, around you. Yeah. You awaken those senses when we leave ourselves open enough to receive. I'm curious, one of the things that you've talked about, and I know people ask you about, is this notion of toxic productivity. So I'd love for you to talk about what is toxic productivity, and how do you manage that?
Well, I would say toxic productivity is a lot of the times where people go to the exact opposite of what we've been talking about. Like, to me, we've been talking about what can you be? What can you be with your life, your business, your money flows, etc., rather than what can you do? And so that toxic productivity, I mean, I was talking to you before we went live, and because I work a lot around the world, when I wake up in Australia, America and Europe are still awake. So they're like, are you awake? Are you awake? And that you can feel them like going, Simone, Simone, Simone. But toxic productivity would be me waking up and then hitting this like stress level, because I can feel everybody around the world needing something, and then going, that's how I create my day. Whereas I don't. It's like, I ask a question of, where is my energy required today? And every morning I ask that. And because you might have, God, nowadays you have so many friggin' platforms, like, of how people communicate with you, and then it'll be like, oh, you'll get a hit, this, that, this. And so to me, it's like, nobody has that relaxation in business that is so available. And from relaxation, you actually expand your awareness, you expand your zone of awareness. Like when something's like shut down and it's sort of confined. And it's like, when we do the toxic productivity, it's about ticking off the to-do list, making sure we're proving that we're doing something, proving our worth rather than just knowing your worth. Rather, when you literally just expand your awareness out across, I do it across the entire planet, because our business is in 187 countries. So, I can't just make it about Australia. So it's bigger, bigger, bigger. And then ask, okay, so where is my energy required today? Where is my energy required right now? And one of the tools that I like to give, which I do myself too, is 1 hour a day and 1 day a week. Do something that's nurturing for you, like nurturing for you and your body. And it could be anything. Like, I mean, I've been up since 4 a.m. on different things now. And in between the stuff I did and you, I just actually lay down on my couch with my hands on my body, just being really present with my body. And just being like, hey, body, and just like having a little chat to it. And I always ask, what would it take for today to be greater than yesterday? Because you're with your body. Your body needs to come along for the ride too, And so just gave myself 30 minutes before I met up with you. And I see the toxic productivity is when people don't allow themselves that space to be with themselves and be with their body.
Wow. We are doing ourselves a disservice when we don't do that. I think, I'm so glad you mentioned that. And it's almost this feeling of people, feel guilty, like they're supposed to give themselves permission to, for this time. Yesterday, I was coming back from a trip and my body was telling me, you need rest. You've got all this work. There's a lot to be done, but it's probably not going to be done well if you don't get some rest. So I moved things around. I shifted them into spaces where I knew I could give better energy to it, and I rested. And I did. It was awesome. It was awesome. I slept. I had great conversation with my mom, ate dinner. I mean, I enjoyed the space that I created to recuperate, rejuvenate. And then sure enough, I got up early. I mean, and it's been, all day productive in terms of getting things done. But I honestly feel that the only reason I was able to do that is because of what I did previously, which was to listen to myself and say, you planned all this stuff today, but that's not really what your body's telling you can accept is aligned with your energy right now.
Yeah.
So you need to realign. And so that's what I listened to.
And I like the way you said that you enjoyed yourself, right? You didn't judge it, you enjoyed it. And then my sense is today you've been really productive and you've also enjoyed it.
Yeah, because I was awake. I had great energy. I felt like my interactions were authentic. I wasn't faking it and, just
boring. That is so freaking boring. It's like,
this sucks.
Yeah. It's like, be you.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I just, I would love to invite anybody who's listening to do exactly what you said. I mean, do you check in with yourself? Do you check in those moments? And usually it's those moments of chaos when so many things are coming at us that it's almost to the overwhelm. We're not sure which thing to do first. That's the time when you need the pause the most. Is what I find, because, sometimes we make the mistake of going, oh my gosh, now I have to be on overdrive so I can answer this email, do this thing. And then now you're even more depleted when you could just take a minute.
Yeah.
Recalibrate, figure out what you can deprioritize or shift, around. And we sometimes are so bound by what the calendar told us to do, or, letting somebody else steal our energy, that you can control it in those moments.
Well, you stop enjoying everything. Like, you were just saying, like, even, people have like another coffee to get that adrenaline, rather than, I love coffee. Like, I love drinking coffee. Well, I enjoy it. I don't have it so I can wake up and be alive for work. It's one of my favorite things in the morning is like, I make a good coffee. I've got great coffee here, but I enjoy it. I don't do it so that I can start. Yeah, no. What if nothing was a necessity and everything was a choice? And have a look at, like you said, it's like, what will bring me joy today? Like, even asking that question.
Can you imagine if you just enjoyed your day?
Yeah, I do.
Every day. So I'm curious, because that is the first book, right, that you wrote about. What inspired you to write your book? The first book?
So what inspired me is Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, because it took him a while, I'm going to say, but he got me to see just how different and weird I was, because my point of view was always, if you're not doing what you love, why are you doing it? I don't understand. And I had this conversation with him at one point, and I said to him, I don't get it. Why is this person making this choice in business? And he went, what do you mean? And I went, well, it's business and business is joyful and they're choosing this. And I don't see the joy in that. And he looked at me and he went, what are you talking about? And I went, and I said it again. And he went, Simone, people don't do business for the joy of it. And I went, yes, they do. And he went, no, they don't. And I went, yes, they do. And we had this back and forth until I looked at him and he went, you're different. And I was like, oh. And he said, you need to start doing classes in this. So that's actually what I first started doing. I first started doing Joy of Business classes. They're called Business Done Different. And, it was like 8 or 10 people sitting around, and I would do this class. But in my head, I was like, oh, this is boring because I could be creating business. And all I'm doing now is just talking about it. And then I had people come up to me and I could feel in their world that they were like, oh my God, thank you so much for these tools. This is everything that I've always known, but nobody talks about it. And I could see the freedom it was giving them. And I went, oh, this does match the energy of what I'd like to create in the world. So then gradually after years, I ended up, getting a lot of my classes and compiling it all and putting it into a book. And now it's translated into 16 languages. And I'm actually working on my second book, which will be called Business Done Different. So yeah, my second business book, I should say. So that's how that grew and got started. So
are you freaking kidding me? That's awesome.
Thank
I
you.
love
Thank
that.
you.
I love that because you it didn't start with, okay, I'm going to write this book for this reason. It started with, you just leaning into that energy, which was, okay, let me help people understand this and get this message out there. And it was asked of you more so than you.
Oh yeah, definitely.
To do it.
Actually, the 3 books I've written have been requested of me because here's the thing. The way we live our life and what we're great at, we think everyone's great at it. If you're a great connector and people go, God, you're great at connecting, and you go, yeah, anyone can do that. No, they can't. You can, So most of the time what we're great at, we think is useless, and then what we're not so great at, we're like, that's like wonderful. So all of these topics, I was like, doesn't everyone do that? And it's like, no. And then I went, oh, I could empower people to know more about what they actually know. Because to me, this is not about me telling you anything. You actually know what works for you. But if we start exploring, like having these conversations, like meeting someone like you is brilliant. Thank you. You're phenomenal. And having these conversations that maybe there's a few people out there who listen and go, maybe I'm not as screwed up as I think I am. Maybe I'm actually more brilliant than I think I am, right. And start to choose from that. That's what makes me, create what I do each and every day.
Yeah. And I love this conversation, and it invigorates me because similar to you, I've always felt like an alien in some way, when you are the deviant.
Yes.
Like I would have different points in my life where I would literally ask myself, am I just deviant? Like, is there a class for this where you just go to the deviant class and there's only like 3 of you because everybody else is normal, because I would always be outside of the box.
Yeah.
Right. There's a box and I'd be like, that doesn't look as fun. I'm going to go out here. I'm going to color outside the lines. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to make my own like stick figures on the chalk on the street. I mean, it was just always a little different.
Yeah.
A little off center like you said, in a creative way of like, what if this can happen? And there's not really a roadmap for it, but I just made one. Would that be okay? Or is that like, rebellious in some way? But I too, like you, it would always have this energy, and I would try to see if there was, something that I could follow, but so many times there wasn't. And I just,
yeah. And it's doing that. It's choosing that from the relaxation too, though, not from the resistance and reaction. Because I see people do that too. Like they'll go into this resistance and reaction and then be like, I will do this, like a petulant teenager. I will do this on my own. I'm going to be different. And it's like, you look like everybody else, I don't know, but whatever era is going through, like when the punk era was out, it's like, you look like everybody else. You're not actually being different, but it's not about the resistance and reaction and having to prove anything. It's truly, as you say, it's like leaning into yourself.
Yeah.
And going, actually, does this work for me? Like, is what you are currently choosing with your life, your business, your relationships, your money flows, your body, everything, is that actually working for you? Or would you like to change something and choose something different? As both of us have said here, you get to choose again.
Yeah. What was your support network? So, as you went, like you talked a little bit about your parents and their different viewpoints as you've gone and made different decisions, and you've talked about the people that have disagreed with you, where do you get the support to do the things that you want to do?
Look, the first person, without a doubt, was my dad. Like, and he used to say, he was so cute. I mean, he was like this Catholic, and he'd say, at 16, sat down, I went, Dad, I don't want to go to church anymore. And I went, I'm not listening to the priest. I'm not doing any of this. I don't get it, you know. And I took a lot of courage to do that because he was a devout Catholic. I went to Catholic schools and everything.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he went, he was so cool. He went, okay, Simone. He said, you don't have to go anymore. He went, I'll pray for you. And I was like, thanks, Dad. So every week he'd go, I'm praying for you. And I'd go, thanks, Dad, you know. But he always let me choose for me. No matter even if he could see I was about to totally stuff something up, he let me choose. And I'm so grateful for that because it allowed me to get that doesn't have to be a right or a wrong. And most people try their whole life to try and get things right rather than have the freedom. And he taught me, choose. Just choose. You stumble and fall. What are you going to do? Are you going to lie in the ground with, crying about your cut knee? Or are you going to get up, be like this energy of like, that was funny, and move on. And he was very empowering like that. So my dad was definitely this rock and for that. And then I'm going to say for quite some time, I didn't find anyone. In truth, what I lent into was drugs, and I started taking a lot of drugs. And to me, that was the closest I could be to not this reality. Like when I was taking drugs, I was like, the insanity is leaving the room, Yeah. And so I lent into that, I'm going to say. And then, honestly, when I met Gary Douglas, like I said, the founder of Access, and Dr. Dane here, who's brilliant, I went to one of their first advanced classes, and I stopped taking drugs at that class. And I remember Gary, during a break, he looked at me and I was crying and I was sitting inside of the room, and he came over and he went, "Are you okay?" And I said, "You got me on the drug thing." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, I've taken a lot of drugs, and I really like what you're talking about." And he said, taking drugs and choosing consciousness is like sitting on the edge of a fence. He said, one day you'll end up impaled. And I looked at that, and he wasn't saying don't do it, it's wrong, which I'm so grateful for, because if he did, I probably would have left. Like I would have gone, stuff you, I'm going to do what I'm doing, and he didn't. He was like, hey, it's all just a choice. But what I started to look at was what he was delivering and these tools and the processes and how he was talking about life, and he was saying, don't trust me, trust you. Like, what do you know? Like that whole empowering you to know that you know. I went, this is what I've been looking for. So that was and I stopped taking drugs then. And I'm really grateful. I like to say I've had a colorful life because I have no place to judge anyone. I definitely have been a naughty girl and been there, done that. And here I am today, So
you.
Yeah. Like it makes all the colors come out, yeah, whatever. It's like, and you have no place to judge anyone because you're like, I done some naughty stuff, So my dad, drugs, which is funny. I'm going to say Gary and Dane and Access, and then me, really me. Like even today, this morning, I was going through some stuff, and I really had to look at me and how different I am, and how if I stopped trying to look for people to relate to me and align and agree with me, then can I acknowledge just how different I am and go with that? And then what else would I like to choose? Like, yeah.
That might be the most powerful thing I've ever heard, because so much is finding this sense of belonging, right? And when you people like you and I, who often just feel the difference immediately, in different moments, different experiences as we walk in the world, there's a lot of questions. You're proud to be who you are, and you go into that, but it isn't until you find that within, that support within at any given point, because the cool thing is that you always have you.
Yeah.
That's the cool thing about it.
You're not going anywhere. Hey. You're watching you.
Hey there. You're still here.
Yeah.
How's it going? I checked out for a minute, but you're still here, right? In your body. You just have to get aligned with maybe your mind and your spirit. But that's, such the fascinating thing is that as we walk through life and growing up, there is a huge energy about finding your affiliations, where do you fit in? Where do you belong? And then when you're saying no to things, because I had a similar experience to you, grew up in Catholicism and, did church because that's what you do. And at some point was like, this is interesting, but I kind of want to see if there's other ways that I can learn things. And so I did, but so for every time that you step out into yourself and into that courage, you could potentially lose this conglomerate of people, or entities. And then, once again, you're still left with yourself. So, it's such a powerful experience to be able to have that conversation with yourself and go, I choose me. Maybe that relationship that I was in didn't work out and we didn't make a choice of choosing each other, but I still choose me, and then you make decisions about the other relationships that you get into, but we're tested so often. And I think when we can come back around to ourselves, we're doing ourselves a big service.
Yeah.
So
I totally agree. You're not less than, like, and even if you start looking at that, it's like for anything. I mean, you mentioned relationships, and so many people, if relationships break up, they start to look at, what did I do wrong? What could have I changed? And it's like, no, you're not less than. It's actually not personal. You're you.
Well, and then you go, I just did this piece. I just did this blog on, because it's one of the most common things that I hear is I'm not enough. Not enough. Insufficiency, inadequacy, because it comes from somewhere, some relationship that didn't work out. Often, that's one example, one common example, but it is this feeling of, ugh, I wasn't good enough. That's why that didn't survive. That's why that didn't last. And we tell ourselves these bullshit, crazy stories that are the farthest from the truth. But in that moment, that's what it feels like. Right. Yeah. So it's, you have to get back centered and get to a place of consciousness and awareness and self-love and worthiness, to combat that. But, there's certain experiences or interactions that can trigger and put us at risk of those thoughts.
Well, I mean, how much do we do that? You said it before, to try and be normal. When you said like those 3 people that, what if we flipped it? Like everyone's trying to be normal and they're trying to do what they've decided is normal. What if like very few of us were normal and we were all different, and that's what we embraced?
Yeah. That would be freaking awesome.
This scene makes me think of, do you remember Monty Python movies, Life of Brian, many, many years old. And there's this scene, and there's this big, massive audience, and they yell out all at the same time in unison, we are all individuals, right? And then the one guy goes, he looks around, he goes, I'm not. It's brilliant. It's like, that's what we're trying to do. We are all individuals by doing the same friggin' thing. No, you're not. You're different. We're different.
No, we're different.
Yeah.
We really are. Oh my gosh, this is so awesome. But Simone, I do want to ask you a couple questions so folks can get to know you a little bit more. So, my first question, as a tribute to the title of my podcast, which is called Born Unbreakable, is what makes you unbreakable?
Me. And when you say born unbreakable, I just got this vision. Apparently, when I was born, I literally came out in 7 minutes backwards with the cord around my neck, and everyone was freaking out. But we make this joke about, I was just like, I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
I'm here. I got this. Don't worry about it. And it was like the roadmap for your life.
Here we go. Let's get it on. Let's start.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Okay. What is something that's on your bucket list?
Something that's on my bucket list. Okay, I've got to say a few countries that I haven't been to, and I've been to a lot of countries. One of the things when I travel, I mean, I've traveled for the last 17 years, like 9, 10 months of the year, except for COVID crap. And I've seen a lot, but I like delving into a country. So Vietnam, Cambodia, there's a few Asian countries I haven't been to that I'd actually like to just go and explore.
Oh, that
Mm.
sounds amazing. Amazing. I think Asia is so fascinating. I would love to just do
Really
an
different.
Asian tour. Okay. What's a self-limiting belief that you've had to overcome?
I'm going to say the judgment of my body. I spent the majority of my life judging my body and, trying to change the way it looks, like the shape and size, to create an image that apparently I was meant to have. And finally, as I got older, not that long ago, like I'm going to say 5, 6 years ago, I finally went, oh my God, you have to stop this. So that was definitely very limiting to me, is judging my body. Because as we've both mentioned, you're here, your body, you're together 24/7.
Here. It's here.
Yeah.
This is the vessel
Yeah. Don't
that we've
apologize.
been
Enjoy it. Yeah.
anointed with,
Yeah.
and we embrace it. We love it. Yeah, no, I feel like so many people listening can resonate with that in some way,
Oh
you
God,
know?
I've spoken to some people that, like, you would say are just so stunningly beautiful, like of what's supposed to be in this reality, and they still have judgments.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting you say that too, because I rarely find someone who isn't self-critical
Mm.
about some aspect, of themselves and in terms of appearance, it could be, and it
Yes.
could be the things that it would surprise you, like, really? Like, oh gosh, I would have never have imagined that,
My knees are too big, or they're not
Yeah.
even, or something like that. You're
Yeah.
like, really?
Yeah. Now that you point it out, no, I'm kidding. You shouldn't have said
I thought
anything.
that was the camera that was off. No.
I thought that made you unique, but what about a superpower on the other side of that? What's something that you're good
Choice,
at, that you're
choice,
proud of?
choice,
Choice.
choice, 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 choice. Learning to choose and be okay to choose again. Like, yeah, because we have
We all need that
choice in public.
superpower to be
Yeah.
spread.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay, if there was one last piece of advice that you could give to anyone listening, what would that be?
What if everything you've ever been told in life you found out was a lie? Like, what would you choose?
Wow.
Mm.
Go ahead and replay that few seconds again. Go ahead. You know how we have when you're listening to something like a podcast or a book, there's this little circle and you could go back
Yes,
15
yes,
seconds?
yes. Listen to that
Okay,
again.
do that. All right, do that. Now you might have to do that twice to get back to that comment.
Yeah.
But that's so powerful. That's just so incredibly powerful, because it's true. Like, if there was a blank canvas
Mm.
and you could do this by design of your own design, whoa, that could be quite different than the blueprint that somebody else gave you.
Yeah. The world is your oyster, as they say. Yeah.
As they say. Simone, how can people find you? If they want to connect with you, learn more about what you do, maybe get more exposure to your books, the kind of experiences that you offer, how might they do that?
Well, my name is perfect for Google because there is no other Simone Milasas that I've come across so far in the world. I know, it's like,
See, that's how different you are.
exactly,
You're
that's
so different that there really isn't anybody,
exactly. So
including your
my
name.
website is SimoneMilasas.com. My Instagram handle is Simone Milasas, Facebook, all of that. And so I've got lots of classes and books, and you can, Google, you can find that. And on accessconsciousness.com, which is the classes I facilitate, it's on there too.
It's incredible. Well, here's the good news about technology is I'm going to make sure all that information that she just said is in the show notes, because there's this little section of when you're listening to podcasts that you click on and you can just go right there to somebody's social media or website. We're so advanced. Look at us. We can do that these days.
Yeah. But
We're
it's really cool that we can connect with like people all over the world too.
all over the
Like
world.
that energy of like, and I'm so noticed in the past few years too. It's like, I want to say people finding your people. I've really had that show up a lot.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, and this is why I think it's so important to, lean in and recognize that we really don't have limitations when it comes to the fact that there's access to not just information, but people all over the world,
Yeah.
when Oh, back when I was trying to access certain pieces of information, it was very limited, you
Mm.
know? The internet just, started coming about, but now these different modalities, like being able to use video conferencing and all this kind of stuff where you could just in seconds connect with somebody in a completely different part of the world is changing the game of how we do anything, how we connect, how we engage, how business happens. And so it truly is a blessing. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I would say if you feel like nobody's got your back or there's no one around you, there are people in the world that do. It's like ask for them to show up. They will.
Yeah. Well, and that goes exactly back to what you said of when people can start with that, giving yourself an hour
Mm.
to just get in touch with yourself and in tune it with yourself, you'll know what are those needs, what is the energy that, what are the things that you want? And when you put that out there into the universe, it will come back to you.
Yeah.
It will come back to you. But
Yeah.
you have to give yourself the time and the space first.
Yeah. Allow
Right.
yourself to receive. Yeah.
Simone, thank you so much.
You're
This has
so
been
welcome.
amazing.
It's been fun. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that I've met you.
This it went by felt like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, really? It's been an hour? How did that even happen? But this is amazing. Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
What a fun interview. Simone's energy is fantastic. I really hope that you took a lot away from that episode. And gosh, there is so many things that I would love to reflect on. But the thing that's standing out the most to me really is this blank canvas and the way she answered the question of what advice would she give? What if everything was a lie and you had to, design your life on your own? What would that look like? So, my homework for you, my assignment for you is to take stock. Take a look. Let's just take it. This is fun. I love this. Take a look at your life and think about its design. What else would you draw on your canvas? What might you change? What might you re-architect? You have a magic wand right now to ask for absolutely anything that it is that you want. What would that look like? What would that look like? That's amazing. I am totally going to lean in to this and do this as a journal excerpt because I think this is a beautiful opportunity for us to take a pause and really get in alignment with who we are, what we want, and how we want to show up in the world. Her energy is the epitome of born unbreakable and being unapologetically you. At every turn of her story, despite the odds, despite what people said or what other people thought, she made her own choices. I want that for you. And please don't mistake this unapologetic self for being, in rebellion or just not listening and to the influences around you. Don't mistake this episode as saying just go out there and be a rebel. What Simone is saying and what I'm stacking my hand on with her is to be somebody. In fact, there's a great book. Look at me, leaning into a book recommendation. One of my favorites, author-wise, Don Miguel Ruiz, The Fifth Agreement. And he talks about being skeptical and asking questions. So my invitation to you is, as people are coming to you with their thoughts, their feelings, their opinions, is that you're asking the question of whether you truly agree, and it's the space of alignment, or if you have a different point of view. Either way, the answer isn't wrong, but just be sure that you're moving consciously, intentionally, authentically in the world. And you will find that when you do that and you're living in your truth, you can achieve what Simone is talking about, which is more joy in your life. Oh, wow. Ooh, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I just want to listen to it all over again because this is a vibration. This is the energy that I want to be in. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, please subscribe or follow the Born Unbreakable podcast so you can get notifications of new episodes, and rate and review if you haven't done that either. I appreciate the feedback. I read every single comment. People who send in an email to des@bornunbreakable.com, I read them. It may take me a while, so don't be upset if it takes me a little while to get back. There's a lot of emails, and I do the best I can in between all of the other things that are going on. So with that, remember, you are your only limit. So take action today. Thanks for tuning in.